Okay, hi everybody. So, an atheist responds to Ray Comfort on the problem of suffering. A recent 1 Minute University video on his Living Waters channel. I'll play you the video in a minute and then I shall respond to it. But before I do, just let me say, for those of you who will say, oh, it's a bit of a weak target, that Noel, Ray Comfort. The reason that I want to go through this is because it is just indicative of how you can indirectly strawman an argument by using such a terribly flaky analogy as Ray uses here. Interestingly, ironically enough, all that he manages to do, all he fashions in this video, is that he demonstrates to us the flaws in his own position rather than demonstrating the flaws in the opposition position, as you will see as I go through it. Okay, I'm going to play you the video in a second. Just let me first comment on the thumbnail, because the video is about the problem of suffering, and it talks about an aeroplane crashing, which doesn't require any evil, doesn't require any malevolence of our will, and yet the thumbnail that he shows what looks for all the world like a woman who's been physically assaulted, which would be much more in tune with the problem of evil. The problem of evil is not the same as the problem of suffering. Different arguments are involved in that. With that in mind, let me now play you his video. I know that some people listen to these videos while they're doing other things, or because they find me physically repulsive, or whatever it may be. So what I will do is I'll give you a little bit of a voiceover in my best Ray Comfort voice, because this is a video with no narration. Okay, I'll play you the video now. Okay, so we start off with the 1 Minute University banner, and then there's the atheist making his argument. All the suffering in the world proves that there's no God, is what it says. Here's Ray's response. You're flying on a new state-of-the-art airplane and you say to yourself, Boeing did an incredible job of making this plane. And now inexplicably somebody is drawing a picture of a British TV wanker Noel Edmonds. And now they're drawing an airport. They've drawn the airport in there. Carries on. Suddenly the plane takes a 5,000-foot drop, killing and injuring passengers. You look at the chaos and say to yourself, look at all the terrible suffering. Therefore, no one made this plane. That doesn't make sense. The logical conclusion is that something went terribly wrong. And now we have another picture, inexplicably, of Noel Edmonds, and then bizarrely a third picture of Noel Edmonds. I think that's all we need to see. Okay, so let's try and pick that apart, because in amongst the beautifully well drawn, if inexplicable, images of Noel Edmonds, Ray Comfort had fashioned his argument there, and it went along the lines that if you think that suffering denies or contradicts the existence of Ray Comfort's God, then that's ridiculous. Just because something goes wrong doesn't mean that it hasn't been designed and built by sentient agents. This is what he's claiming. He's quite correct. The problem is that he just deliberately quite overlooks the characteristics that he applies to his God. He regards his God, of course, as omniscient, as omnipotent, and as omnibenevolent. His God is perfect, and when he does things, he does them perfectly. He can do it no other way. So if we're to look back at his analogy, what I'm expected to entertain is this idea that Boeing employs perfect aeronautic designers, right, who know everything that you could possibly know about aircraft and can see to the future and see how their aircraft are going to perform, and by doing so design the perfect aeroplane. And then it passes to the engineers and mechanics who build the plane, and they're all perfect engineers and mechanics. They never make a mistake, and they put the plane together perfectly. Then it passes on to the quality control section, and it's the perfect quality control section. They never miss a single thing. And then finally the plane is piloted by the perfect pilot who never makes a mistake. He cannot make a mistake because it's in his nature never to make a mistake. And all of these individuals, right, the designers, the engineers and mechanics, the quality control and the pilot, they are all perfectly benevolent. The last thing that they would ever want, would be for anybody to get injured as a result of a plane that they've designed, that they've built, or that they are flying. And do you know what happens? Do you know what happens on its maiden flight? This plane Its wheels barely have left the tarmac when the wings fall off like some kind of aircraft equivalent of a clown car, except it's nowhere near as funny because people die in a fireball. That is the real analogy that would make sense here, because from Ray Comfort's position, he is a biblical literalist, right? This is the Bible, just the Old Testament. There's a lot of it. There's about 1,200 pages. Do you know how far you have to get into it before the wheels start falling off? Page 6, right? Page 6 out of 1,200, if you believe what Ray Comfort believes. What he believes is that God created Adam and Eve. He created them innocent in the Garden of Eden, so they didn't really know what was right and what was wrong, or they had to do what God says. And then lo and behold, almost straight away they disobeyed him. And so what does he do? He punishes them. It's like me kind of breeding a really, really violent dog, the most violent dog that I can breed, and then just putting it in a room with a small child. And then when the inevitable happens that I know is going to happen because I can see into the future, because I'm God, and it starts chewing the child's head off, I think, well, that's it. I'm going to punish this dog now and punish all its little doggy descendants from now and for all of eternity. So this is the deep, deep flaw in Ray Comfort's reasoning here, and why I propose he's effectively creating a straw man through analogy, because nobody is suggesting that the existence of suffering, the problem of suffering, suggests that a universe couldn't have been created by in intelligence. It's not that the argument is not aimed at the act of creation, it's at the purported qualities of the creator which are intrinsic to Ray Comfort's particular religion. This idea that the creator is omniscient, they have perfect knowledge of what they are doing and how what they are doing is going to pan out. They are perfectly benevolent. The one thing that they would want to do in anything they create is to mitigate the suffering of any sentient agents that are within it. They are omnipotent, they are perfectly powerful, so nothing that is logically possible is outside their abilities. So they can envisage this perfect world without suffering, they would want this perfect world without suffering, and they have the means to create a perfect world without suffering, and yet our limited intelligences can envisage how our world could exist and have less suffering within it. It boggles the mind that anybody would even try and defend this, because quite clearly, logically, it is not a tenable claim to try and defend. Maybe that's why Ray Comfort doesn't really try and do it. He tries to spin it, he tries and twists it. Maybe that's the trick he's trying to play. Interested to know what you think about that. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.